Welcome to another AVID chat. Today we're going to talk a little piggyback off of our 5 degrees of freedom that we went through earlier this month. And really, we're going to call this degree 1.5. And even going through the series, you and I were talking about just how difficult it is to really not only get going, but stay the course. And I think that's really the topic for the day, the difficulty of staying the course.
Yeah. So I don't know how much video everyone is watching this is watched, but we did the 5 degrees freedom, kind of the, steps, kind of progressions along the way. Kind of the first one was really figuring out where you're headed, being clear, having a clear vision of what you're trying to accomplish. It's kind of pointing yourself in the right direction in a sense. And that process is hard because that just takes a lot of introspection. It takes a lot of thinking about what is really valuable to me. Why am I even doing the things that I'm doing? These are all difficult questions to answer. It takes a little bit of time. So we even said in the videos, like, it's the most important, but it's probably the most difficult. And it's very specific to you. I can't give you, person watching, how to do it, other than saying, here's a few things you could try, but I can't tell you what's most important to you. So it's hard to do. You can't look for outside validation. You can't search the internet, what's important to me, because it's you. So that's why it's difficult. So, the problem is a lot of times when you go through this, we've done another video on stages of change. That was probably at this point months ago. Right. And you kind of go through these stages of change, and kind of one of the stages of change, I think maybe it's the third stage of change, is kind of this contemplation stage. And then the contemplation stage is when you start thinking about, okay, what would I do to change? Thinking about what's the process going to be, that kind of thing. But a big part of that is thinking about what are the obstacles that I'm going to encounter on my path to doing something different.
No doubt.
So,
and you have to be aware of that. So what kind of obstacles might arise on this path? So let's say that you've gone through this whole process and you're very clear, like, these are the things that I want to do. I think it's funny because a couple of things happen. One is, if you really do a good job of this, a lot of times you realize there's a lot of things that don't matter to you that you're doing currently that you could basically get rid of. And the things that are really, really important to you, a lot of times are much more simple than what you think you should be doing in some sense. The issue is, it is almost always different than what other people are doing. Not in some be contrarian for the sake of what's that? Yeah, not in a negative way. Not be contrarian for the sake of being contrarian. It's different only because you're a different person. Your experiences are different, and all these things are just, it's a little bit different. It's not opposite, but it is a little bit different. And you'll find that when you start to do that, one is you'll realize, man, these are going to be some changes that I'm going to have to make. I'm excited about my vision and where I want to go, but man, there's a lot of changes I have to make, and it may involve, I might have some different friends, or there might be some family members that aren't going to necessarily be supportive, but also probably 80% of it is, am I ready, to put the effort out that I want to actually get there? That's the vast majority of it. Do I really want to put out the effort it's going to take to get to this thing that I'm very confident is where I actually want to go? That's hard. It is hard. And even if you say, yes, I'm ready, or, if you're in a relationship, we're ready, let's do this thing together. Whether it's a month, 2 months, 8 months into this, something might trigger your brain to question, what are we doing this for?
Yes.
It'd be way easier just to do what we were doing, which almost, what the? I'm not even sure what that was. Oh, some marker board or something. Did you hear that?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow. It started raining and whatever. Anyway, so you're in the moment of it, and there you might start to question it, which that in itself brings on some challenges, because you're going to be faced with, maybe it's, I think, like a cash flow thing is easy to pick on, to be a little technical. We've talked about this before, and you shared personal experience. You spend about 5 minutes every day just making things are going in the right area that you've thought about. Maybe you spend 15 minutes a week reviewing it with Jessica, maybe 30 minutes a month, etc. It'd be way easier just to spend the money.
Yeah, sure. Right.
But you've had an experience, is why I think you do what you do now, is you've relieved the anxiety, you've given your dollars a job, so to speak, and that helps you stay the course and focus, but it still comes with a sacrifice. And that's the day-to-day commitment to say, I'm just going to take a few minutes today and make sure that I'm spending the money where I want to spend it.
Yeah. There's a lot of outside pressure to conform, to just do what's expected of you. Like, this is what people do, so you should just do the same thing. There's a lot of pressure to do that. Again, it's not in a negative way. I think we just tend to all of us collectively copy each other. It's like this reinforcement. I'm doing it because you're doing it. Well, hold on, I'm doing it because you're doing it. And then it's just kind of the circular thing. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's kind of mentally taxing to continue and to reevaluate and those kinds of things. But I really do think, like, the hardest thing is to say, I'm responsible to get this stuff done. And where do I start? Like, we use the metaphor, like, figuring out where you're headed is like climbing a mountain, and getting to it's hard, but you get to the top, you're a little bit more clear. It's easy to see where things are. And then once you see where you're going, it's easier to come back down the mountain and get, we kind of like little steps. This is the path that I'm taking because I saw it from the top of the mountain. But sometimes it's almost like you get to the top of the mountain and then there's just another bigger mountain beyond, because you've figured all this stuff out. You've gotten to the top of this mountain, and then you realize, man, now there's like brass tacks. Like, I really actually need to do something to achieve this thing that I want to achieve. And it's going to take a long time and probably a lot of effort on my part in order to get there. And it's not going to happen in 6 months. Like, it's just going to take some time, probably somewhat of a lifetime. I mean, we've said before, like, really good kind of high level objectives, what we would say is, because you have high level objectives, intermediate goals, kind of daily actions or whatever. A good high level objective is something that you really probably never can technically achieve, like live a fulfilling life. It's kind of
forever
hard to put your thumb on, but you're always working towards that. All those intermediate goals are just steps along the way. And then you work. You work on living a fulfilling life. You do the best you can. You get better all the time, and then you die. And you've all been working that your whole way. That's what kind of keeps you motivated to keep doing these things. So,
yeah. Do you think the fear of failure plays a role at all? In other words, top of the mountain, see the big picture, get to the bottom. I've got the path. Now I've got to start walking down this path. And if I start walking, and if I start sharing where I'm walking with other people, now it's almost like I can't mess up. I can't go back, because then what? I've gone down this road for 3 or 4 years, and maybe it's a business venture, maybe it's a personal goal, maybe it's something, and you're getting into it like, this isn't good. But you're like, well, I've came this far, might as well just keep going. So
yes. I think the fear of failure, we talk to people about how they feel about just how they feel about setting goals. Like, what do you think about goal setting? Like, to some people, it's like a very anxiety inducing thing. Like, I just think it's been so like beat into people's heads, like, achieve goals. And then you never really know what your goals are. They're usually given to you. Like, here's your goals. People just get anxious about it. It's just not easy to say goal setting, and it's almost like trite at this point. Like, it's just become almost more of a negative thing than anything else. I think it's actually a very positive thing. I think there's a way to do it. I think it's a skill that you work on and develop. But yeah, I think the fear of setting a goal and not achieving it, and how that would feel if you don't achieve it, is a deterrent to even getting started in the first place, for sure.
Yeah. So what could you do to maybe better fulfill the goal that you have? In other words, I have this idea that I'm going to start running 3 days a week, and I'm somewhat hesitant because I don't, what if I can't do it every 3 days? And what if I fail? Like, what things would you suggest would help me overcome some of those things, maybe relieve the anxiety, so that even if I start going and I, 1 week miss 2 of the 3 days, it doesn't completely just blow up and it's like, you know what, this is a stupid goal anyway. I don't want to run.
Yeah. I think
step one is knowing that this is going to happen. So you're going to have obstacles, and sometimes you're not going to want to do it. And like, that's just a completely normal thing. Like, you're not like a broken person because you're having trouble actually going out and achieving the goals that you've set. Like, I think that's normal. Like, so one is admitting to yourself, is it going to be hard? And I'm not going to always do great. And I might fail sometimes, and I'm going to trip over myself and make mistakes. And that's just, you learn from those things. I think just admitting it is good. I think, like, as far as like a process to do it, I think a good thing to do is, one, identify some kind of high level objective or value that you're shooting for. So like, if you like, the running thing would be like, I want to live my life as a healthy person. Then it's my intermediate goal, let's say, is to run 3 miles a week or something, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But then there's like basic actions, but also sometimes those intermediate goals. So what we've had people do before is just like write down all the steps it would take in order to get to what they think would be a high level objective. So maybe that's 100 steps, like 100 things. And once you start writing, like, you'll see, oh, I got to do this and I got to do this, or any project, all these 100 steps. But a lot of times within all those things that you've written down, you'll realize that like, step 10 is actually its own intermediate goal. Like, that's a thing to work towards, because that's a lot. Like, that's a big part of it. So sometimes it's start breaking things out into more intermediate goals instead of making the one huge thing the intermediate goal, and start breaking it down into little smaller goals. So it's something like if I'm going to run, well, the thing is, my intermediate goal would be something like, this week, I want to run 1 day or something. Sure. Just like something that you can work up towards.
And then you'd start with steps like, all right, first thing I got to do is I have to get out of bed. I got to put on the running gear. I got to put on my shoes. I need to eat something with protein or give me energy. So maybe in your example, the 10th step is I need to get out the front door. It sounds so easy, but getting out the front door is you can't run until you get out the door.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to kind of start small. And like, from a financial standpoint, so every once in a while you get something like a common question is, should I max out my 401k? Well, one, if you don't know what a 401k is or how it works or what it does, you've either heard that from somebody, you're jumping 50 steps into what you can be doing. You've skipped over all of those steps, and so you'll do it because you think that you should do it, which is never really good. And you just start doing it, and then you can't quite put your finger on what the problem is, but you're not exactly comfortable with what you're doing, either because you don't know why you're doing it, you're not sure what it even is, how it works. Also, there's might be some other things that you think you might want to be doing that are nagging at you, but you can't quite put your finger on it. And that's usually what happens when you start jumping in. That's why we did the whole degrees. Yes. And usually the investing is like the last one. It's because most people jump right to that without figuring all the other things out first. And they're naturally just more anxious. So when the market doesn't do well for 6 months, they're just panicked because that's the only thing that they've done. There's no other foundation to it. So,
yep. That's a great point.
So this is like a degree 1.5. It's just knowing, like, this is going to be hard. Like, it's going to take some time and it's going to take some commitment. But if you've done a good job in like step or degree 1, where you've got a pretty clear vision, you can get back on track because you've done. That's really is the most difficult thing to do.
I agree. And another thing just popped into mind as maybe an aid to accomplishing these things and staying on track and help fight the urge to, stop doing what you're doing is, I'm obviously biased, but have a third party involved. Yeah. Have somebody that you can, bounce ideas off of, share your failures with, because even inside those failures, there's a positive that can come of it, right? They say even as long as you're failing differently every time and learning from the failure, then it's just getting you closer to the goal. So I would also encourage anybody to use another person. Doesn't have to be a professional, I guess, depending on what category you're trying to do. But that helps for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. A good accountability partner, somebody that will be straight up with you and tell you, here's what you said you're trying to accomplish. And I don't know, maybe this needs to go this way, or no, you're doing great. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, yeah, you had a misstep, but that's normal. It's not a big deal. Here's all the other 10 things that you did really well. Actually, you're kind of killing it as far as that's concerned. Don't worry so much about this one thing. that didn't go right. So it is good to have, like you said, a third party, professional or otherwise. We've said this so many times. A good friend that's just like a straight shooter type that wants to do this with you, I think would be good. But, a professional is always a good option too.
Yep. Agreed. Well, I think that's it. Degree 1.5. If you have any questions, we can help you then, or food for thought, reach out to us. We'll throw it into the next AVID chat. As always, good to see you, Jack.
All right. See you, Dave.